Welcome back to Majority 6440. So I'm Sophie, and my favorite street in St. Louis is South Grand because there's a lot of immigrant-owned restaurants, and it's a really cool community, and it's just a fun drive.
Hi, my name's Claire, and my favorite street in St. Louis is Manchester Road because it goes right by West County, right by my house, and then it goes all the way to South County, South City, and it's got a lot of cool different neighborhoods that it passes through, so you can see how everywhere changes as you're driving down Manchester.
And I'm Katie, and my favorite street, I love South Grand, but I think my favorite street is probably Cherokee Street because it's just a very different, it's so much different than every other street in St. Louis because of the history of all the different Hispanic communities that moved there.
Today's episode is on the Democratic debates, which happened Tuesday and Wednesday. And I want to talk about something that I think a couple of different people brought up in different ways. But is it more important to have the personality or the winnability aspect? And we're having some technical difficulties. Is it better that you vote in a primary for a candidate that you identify with, or is it better that you vote for a candidate that you think is going to beat Donald Trump? Let's go.
I can start. I think that you have to take both into consideration. It's not necessarily one or the other, but I think that definitely a candidate that you agree with their beliefs and what they want to do and what they want to implement should be higher on your priority list than who you think has the best chance of beating Donald Trump, because one, it's important to elect representatives and elect government officials who you think will represent you and your values, but at the same time, because I dislike Donald Trump as much as I do, I need to have confidence in the person that I'm voting for and in the fact that they can, in fact, get Trump out of office. So, a little bit of both, but more of aligning with their policies and what they want to make and see happen, and then slightly, but still important, is their ability to knock out President Trump.
Yeah, I agree, except maybe I lean more towards the someone that will knock out. Maybe because in my mind, I'm very kind of pessimistic about this election, because in my head, I think sadly Biden is one of our only chances to be, depending on what the ticket becomes for other candidates, but Biden might be our only chance to get rid of Donald Trump, just because incumbency voting and everyone kind of is being okay. They're everything's kind of fine for me, or at least the majority of America is like that. And I don't think enough people are empathetic enough to care about the rest of the people whose lives are worse under Donald Trump. And so I think our priority should be getting rid of Donald Trump, but I think that's only for this special case, and it shouldn't be true for other elections, because at this point, I just want Trump out. But in any other case, it would be, I want someone that I care about, if that makes sense.
I think Amy Klobuchar said it, but she said we need to stop trying to win an argument and actually focus on winning elections. And then if any of you guys watched The Spin afterwards, a lot of the spin of the first night of debate after Bernie and Elizabeth Warren was the fact that the proposals that they're proposing, so Medicaid for all, is actually not popular with the larger nation as a whole. And so I think some of the difficulty with the Dem debates is that you have progressives versus moderates, but it's how progressive can we go before we lose the election, but how moderate can we go before we lose the progressive vote, which also means we lose the election. I'm a big fan of personality politics when it comes to primaries. 2020 is such an odd year because we have to beat Donald Trump, because 4 more years of him means it's game over, and there's relatively few candidates on that debate stage that I think can actually beat him.
Add on to, I guess, what I said. If I genuinely agree that it's just an odd year. In an ideal scenario and for how things should go, it should be, I vote for the candidate that I agree closely with. I'm sorry to say, but I'm starting to actually kind of like Yang. But I would never vote for him because he wouldn't beat Trump. So, it's just, and also I think that's the problem with having so many different personalities on the stage, is that now people are going to want to write in all those candidates, and all of those votes will be taking away from the candidate that is going against Trump, which will probably be Biden. You know what I mean? So people are going to be writing in Bernie Sanders, people are going to be writing in Warren. For a fact people are going to be writing in Yang. And so I just think that's a problem. That's actually going to be a downfall in this election, and that's probably why I'm more pessimistic about this upcoming 2020 election.
So I think that because of what I said earlier, if you're like me and you're someone who thinks that you should place more emphasis and more importance on having your views align with your political candidate. You have to be willing to accept the fact that if you do believe in voting for the person who you align with the most, you have to be okay with the fact that you might not be voting for that person in the general election. Because like I said, like a few times, like I stand by what I mean, when I think Joe Biden has the best chance of winning this primary, but he's not the candidate that I agree with the most policy-wise. So I'm just saying, because I think it's important to agree with whoever has the same policies and same beliefs that you do, you also have to be okay with, voting for that person in the primary and perhaps not voting with them in the general. And even if you can't vote for them in the general, are you still willing to knock Trump out of the office regardless of who's on the opposing side of the ticket? So just keep that in mind.
All right, we've talked a lot about policy and how important that is. So let's talk about an actual policy. And disclaimer, even though about an hour of those 4-hour debates was spent on Medicare for all, that's something that the three of us in this car really want to do more research on before we share who we thought won and lost that debate. So stay tuned for a longer edition. But something that we're all comfortable discussing is immigration. So let's talk about the immigration policies we saw across both nights, who we think won, who we think lost that immigration debate.
One comment that was made by Beto when he brought up the fees that immigrants have to pay in order to even apply to become U.S. citizens. Because how much does it cost, Sophie?
$750 without a scholarship.
$750. Like that.
It's a lot.
That is a lot.
And for someone who's
money.
just now coming to this country, and especially refugees or asylum seekers, I guess is what, who cannot afford even to get here sometimes, they can barely afford to get here, let alone spend that much money.
Well, and you have to pay back. So if you're a refugee, you have to pay back your plane ticket. You have to pay back the expenses it took to get you to the country. So you have to pay all that back, and then you have to pay $750 to apply to be a citizen. That's not to say that you get to be a citizen. It means you get to take the application to become a citizen. Again, we all know I'm a Beto fan, but I love Beto's policy because not only does he look at what's going on the border and the crisis, the moral crisis, the humanitarian crisis that we're having there, he also looks past that and he realizes that just because once you get to the United States, it doesn't make that transition any easier. We need to fix immigration from the moment you set foot on U.S. soil to 5-10 years after you become a U.S. citizen, because the challenges of immigration don't stop once you've claimed asylum. It doesn't stop once you're out of the detention facility, and it doesn't stop after you become an American citizen.
Yeah, so there's also been talk from a few of the candidates about decriminalizing the border. And on that issue, as much as I want to say that it sounds like a good idea, I don't think that'll necessarily solve the problem. I know that it's coming from, all the candidates who have said that they would like to decriminalize the border, it's coming from a good place and where they're coming up with this idea in general.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that'll be the way to solve the issues. I think stopping the separation of families would be one, I wouldn't say easy, but feasible thing for a newly elected president to get done and get done quickly. Decriminalizing the border, I think, as much as people are talking about how sometimes with these really far left progressive ideals, we're going to lose the moderates, and I think that decriminalizing the border is one thing, especially with the America that Trump has created in the past 4 years, that decriminalizing the border will turn a lot of people away who are in the middle of deciding who they want to be the next president, and immigration is a big taking point for people, and I think decriminalizing the border is something that they would turn away from.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess this is going to be talked about more in another episode, but that's what I also is thinking is the problem with Medicare for all is as much as I support an idea of giving every single person great amazing health care that's affordable or free, I just don't think it will even pass with Democratic voters, let alone Republican voters. And Warren and Bernie, they wouldn't get the votes we need if they really chime in on that, I guess. And I think it's the same what you were saying with immigration, where there's not a lot of Democrats that are as progressive and liberal as we want to believe, and I think there's a lot of xenophobic Democrats that are actually not as for immigration as we believe they are, and I think that would be a big push away if we decriminalize the border.
I agree. I think there's ways to decriminalize the border without actually decriminalizing the border. And what I mean by that is our border right now is a 2,000 long mile military zone. that is unnecessary, that is making people die, and it's cruel. It's cruel and unusual. And I think when we talk about decriminalizing the border, what we should mean is people can leave humanitarian aid out there for people trying to get across the border. I think it was, I don't know which candidate it was, somebody brought up the point that if we decriminalize our southern border, then all of the people who live in Europe or Asia or Africa who also want to come to the United States and are also facing just as much humanitarian crises, they don't have the option of just walking to the border. They have to wait in line, they have to wait in camps. Claire and I both know people who have sat in camps for 12, 15 years because there was no way to get here. So I think that was a good point. And as much as I would love to say decriminalize the border, I think what we need to say is demilitarize, then decriminalize.
I think this is very, I don't know if it's hypocritical or like what word I'm really looking for here, but when it comes to immigration, is that we get mad at China for not allowing North Koreans to safely, not safely cross the border into their country, and we're doing the same thing with Mexico. And so I think if we really care about people, and this goes back to the empathy thing that I don't think enough people really have to actually win this real debate this year, is I think we need to start maybe not definitely demilitarizing, and I don't know about decriminalizing, but we just need to do more with the border and making sure people are safe.
So I think in general it's important that each candidate is super duper duper specific on what they plan to do regarding the issue of immigration, I guess. But Sophie has brought up this point before, and how Beto has clearly laid out what he wants to do, what he wants to see happen, and then you look at Buttigieg, and it's very, very, it's just a lot of information to take in, and it's not as, I don't know, easy to understand, but also detailed, specifically laid out. It's very general, and I think that with that comes exposing the truths and debunking all of these myths and, I don't know, just other false beliefs that xenophobic Americans have about immigrants. Because I think Andrew Yang brought up a good point when he said if you go into a factory, the typical belief is that you think there's going to be immigrant workers taking those jobs, but in reality it's robots. It's not even American citizens. It's robots. And I think making comments like that and also having, a Beto specific plan is very, very essential, because immigration is such a hot topic right now, and because we have a president who is dealt with immigration in such a terrible, terrible way that one of those, it is the most pressing issue for the United States right now. So I think it needs to be dealt with in a very specific manner, and not, the broad JFK, I'm going to do this, but not tell the specifics of how type of manner. I don't like that way of handling it.
One thing though with I think Beto obviously had the best substantial plan and everything. I still don't think he won that debate though, because I first of all don't think they gave Beto enough time. Maybe they didn't, I just didn't really realize, because it wasn't really continued on. There was not much fighting with him, but I think he didn't win fighting wise because the candidates just aren't really on the same page as him, if that makes sense, and so it looked like he lost. But it could also have just been how the moderator handled it as well.
Right, two things. One, I love that people are getting on the Beto train over here. I guess I'm doing my work. Beto, hire me. Number two, let's talk real quick about how we need to discuss candidates that have skeletons in their closet. What do we want to see them do? Do we want to see them acknowledge it? Do we want to just see that their policies have changed? They need to address it? How do we feel about that?
So I know I definitely want to see them acknowledge it. I want to hear an apology. I know Joe Biden has yet to say the words "I'm sorry" to every female that he has had a questionable experience with that has called him out verbally and been very open about it. I know he's yet to say "I'm sorry" to every single one of them. I want to hear those words. I want to hear candidates acknowledge that they're wrong. Kamala Harris claimed last night that everything her opposing candidates were saying was wrong, but she just wouldn't own up to anything. And we all know that she has a lot of questionable things in her history as Attorney General, and I need her to just accept that and own up to those mistakes that she made and show us that they are different. Joe Biden shows that he's different. Joe Biden called out Cory Booker, and Cory Booker tried to blame him on the fact that he inherited a bad crime system, a weak crime system, and it's not about that. It's about how are you going to change, how are you going to admit that it was your fault, something was actually your fault, not just that you inherited these problems. And yeah, I would like to see them own up to it, and I do think it is important to take into account what these people have in their skeletons, and if they're willing to proudly say, yeah, I did that, but this is how I'm going to fix it, or if they're willing to just, deny it.
I guess I need more than just words. I need, like, specifically with Kamala, I need a literal outward, like, here's my plan to change what I've done. Like, specifically with, like, criminal justice reform. I need her to come out, not only apologize, because I think that's important, she needs to apologize as well, but to also be like, this is how we're going to help incarcerated black men and women, incarcerated people that I've put there, out from, like, help them readjust into, like, society again. I want more than just an apology. I want substantial, here's what I'm going to do to fix the mistakes I made. But, I mean, one person that, Gabbard, I honestly, Tulsi, I like her presence on a stage. I am okay with what she's been saying. I would probably like her way more if she didn't have all those skeletons. And she even apologized for some of the things she said, and it's said she's changed. But even so, I just think some candidates, they're too far gone. Like, obviously with Elizabeth, people were able to overlook the whole I'm one whatever Cherokee thing, because that was problematic, but it wasn't, like, that big of an issue. But Kamala will never get rid of those skeletons in her closet.
I think that's another divide. People are always talking about the progressive moderate divide, but one of the bigger divides is that we have people on this stage who have not and will not apologize for the behavior they exhibited. But I would really love my president to be able to say, look, I made a mistake when I was doing this. I was young, I was inexperienced, and here's how we're going to fix it. And I think Tulsi Gabbard is one of the better ones on that stage, which is surprising.
I think they're very stubborn, and they think that will make them lose by being, like, acknowledging it. But honestly, it would look way better if you guys did. So if you're going to listen to us from candidates, do that, please.
Alright, so we've done a lot of hard news here. So in true St. Louis style, we're going to ask some real interesting questions about who we would go to sports games with or road trip with, political candidate wise. So Katie, you want to start us off with a question?
Yeah, with 3 candidates, who would you like to road trip with, and where would you go?
Okay, so definitely Bernie Sanders, 1, Amy Klobuchar, 2, because they both went to University of Chicago, and that's where I currently go now. So I think that would be a fun little hangout with 2 alumni. They're also Bernie Sanders and Amy Klobuchar. So we got the Midwest with Amy Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders. I really like Bernie. My third one, I think would have to be Pete, because I know somebody doesn't like Pete. Pete, I just really want to have a conversation with him. That's why I think having a road trip where he's in a car and he can't leave, he's like, can't dodge a question.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's no cameras or anything. It's just like talking to normal people. So yeah, that would be mine.
Okay, fine. I'm taking Beto. He's gonna be my navigator. We're gonna go camp in the desert, even though I'm super Irish, so I'll just die, I guess. But it'll be worth it. So Beto's my navigator, and then I know I just said ew to Claire taking Buttigieg, but, like, I'm taking him with me because...
Okay.
Oh. That'd be funny, too, because, like...
Buttigieg is going to be the backseat driver.
Beto and Buttigieg, like, they would know, like, they just dissed me, and, like, this is the girl that, like, loves Beto, and, like, he's here, too.
That's why Beto's navigating.
Probably awkward, though.
Buttigieg is in the back.
Who's your third?
I just had it. Shoot. Katie, who are you? And I need to rethink about this third person.
Well, the thing is, now that I'm on kind of the Yang gang on the low key, I would absolutely love to hang out with Yang, so I would go with him. And along with that, I want to see if Gabbard really is, like, a changed person or not. So I would probably go with them. And, like, we would do the West Coast, I guess, because that's where they're from. And, or, like, you know, politically where they're from. And I guess along with them, this is hard. I guess I would have to take Marianne with me. And we all, like...
I forgot about Marianne.
I would absolutely take Marianne because she's just such an entertaining person. And I actually low-key really like her as well. So I'd probably take Marianne.
I remembered my third person. I'm taking de Blasio to bully Mayor Pete.
Oh.
They're both in the back seat. Like, de Blasio's like, what, 6, whatever? He's just, Mayor Pete's so tiny and de Blasio's so tall. So, that's my 3 people. Okay.
New question. Who's one person you would take to a ball game, and who's one person you would take to a hockey game? Ball being baseball.
I'm taking Bernie to a hockey game.
That'd be fun.
We're gonna go hard.
That'd be really fun. I feel like Bernie could like let loose too.
Yeah. Bernie be over there yelling at the refs.
But like similar, I would take de Blasio to a hockey game because he would just be so into it. And de Blasio kind of reminds me of my uncle. My uncle like is obsessed with the Blues, so I would of course take de Blasio to a Blues game.
I would take Klobuchar. She's from the Midwest. She's got to be a hockey fan, yo. She's got to be enthusiastic about it as well.
I'm taking Yang to the ball game because I feel like he'd be able to do their batting averages so fast, and also he would just be a great conversational partner. And you don't go to a baseball; it's 3 hours. Like you have to talk. And the only candidate I really want to have a 3-hour conversation with besides Beto is Yang.
For baseball, I would take Biden because I feel like he would pay for everything. And that would be really, and also I feel like it would just be like funny, just like, like your grandfather coming with you. He would buy me ice cream. That's really sweet of him. I'm vegan, or I'm trying to be, so that'd be a little inconvenient, but still, it'd be fun.
Yeah. I think I'd take Beto. I feel like going to a game with Beto would just be really fun, easy conversation, having a good time, having some ice cream, all the good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And final question, this one's going to get personal. If you had to replace your 2 co-hosts with presidential candidates for Majority 6440, who would you replace them with?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I already know mine. No offense. Amy Klobuchar, 1, because, of course, you Chicago, but 2, she claims her hometown like no other, and anyone at Chicago knows.
You want to talk about claiming hometown? That Montana, bro.
Bullet! Let's
Yeah,
go.
that's true. And anybody knows that I claim St. Louis hard. And she's also from the Midwest, so that's a bonus. And then Bernie, because Bernie is extremely, extremely intelligent. Also went to Chicago, and he is very just interesting guy to make conversation with. I mean, he literally just had an interview with Cardi B. This man can talk to anyone, clearly.
Which one of us is Klobuchar and which one of us is Bernie?
Bernie Klobuchar.
That's fair.
I like that.
Yeah. I guess mine, I would love to transfer this into an environmental thing. So Inslee for sure would become one of my co-hosts. And I originally was probably going to say Marianne, but that would just turn this into a completely different vibe than what we want. So probably, honestly, maybe Beto, and we could talk some environmental policies together. And I think it would be a good conversation. It would be very relaxed, I think, with the 3 of us.
And who's who?
Beto, and then Inslee.
Yes. Okay, so originally this was going to be a Beto Buttigieg thing, but I just can't put myself through that. So I am going to say I'm going to take Beto and Bernie, and we're actually going to put Beto in the back for this one, because I feel like Beto would open his mouth and Bernie would be like, just shut up. You're wrong. Medicaid for all.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I really want that dynamic in this car. And Beto, Bernie, obviously. Yeah, Claire yells at me more, so. In a good way. Which she's going to yell at all of us now with some advice.
Yeah, so my advice, we were talking about social media at work, so it made me think about this. Be yourself on social media. Don't pretend to be someone else. I don't like the idea of people who go on Facebook and they create fake Facebooks so that their employers won't see them commenting racist things or just slurs in general on other people's accounts and going off on them. And I think social media has become such an important tool, as much as that kills me to say it, because Donald Trump has turned to Twitter for everything political. That has forced the rest of Congress and even state Congress levels to turn to Twitter as a good platform. So I think we definitely have to be careful with it, but also just be honest and not cyberbully, because that's just, cyberbullying is, no, it's not.
Alright, my hand's numb, so we're gonna end this. Bye!
Bye!